Hello, my name is Corinne Rocca, and I'm an epidemiologist and assistant professor at Advancing New Standards in Reproductive Health at the University of California, San Francisco. Welcome to Explained, Abortion Research and Policy. In this video, I'll address abortion and emotion. First, what emotions do women express after having an abortion, both within days and years afterwards? In particular, I'll talk about what research shows about the extent to which women feel that their abortion decision was the right one for them. Then, I'll address whether scientific evidence supports the idea that abortion causes emotional harm to women and justifies restricting abortion access on that basis. In the United States, there's a common refrain that abortion is emotionally harmful to women. State legislatures and many courts, including the Supreme Court, have imposed regulations on abortion provision based on claims that many women come to regret their abortions or that abortion damages women emotionally. For example, more than half of U.S. states have instituted laws requiring that women wanting an abortion wait up to 3 days after in-person counseling before they can actually have the abortion. Similarly, some require providers to deliver a state-written counseling script alerting patients to the purported dangers of having an abortion. The argument legislatures put forward in support of these types of laws is that many women suffer emotional harm from abortion and/or come to regret the abortions they choose to have. But what do we really know about women's emotions after their abortions? Do women feel they made the right decision afterwards? And thinking more broadly about our laws and policies, does what we know from evidence justify restricting abortion based on this claim that women experience emotional harm from abortion? The best science today tells us that women's emotions after having an abortion in the United States are more complicated and multifaceted than many legislatures and judges think. Some women experience primarily positive emotions, others primarily negative emotions, others a mix of both, and many experience very few emotions at all. But overall, intensity of emotions declines over time, and relief is by far the predominant emotion women feel, both immediately and years later. Perhaps most importantly, actual abortion regret about the decision is uncommon. Now I will tell you more about what research shows about emotions after abortion. Turns out that until recently, we actually didn't know a lot about women's emotions after abortion, particularly emotions experienced in the long term. There have been a few studies examining women's emotions in the short term, so a few days or weeks after an abortion, but these studies were conducted either decades ago or in Europe. So the results might not have captured the current reality of women's experiences in the U.S., where abortion is controversial and stigmatized. Research on longer-term emotions, that is, what women feel years after the abortion, has been even more scant and has suffered from important methodological problems. These include selection bias, underreporting of past abortions, loss to follow-up, or small sample sizes. The most definitive research on this topic comes from a recent study conducted by a team of researchers, including myself, at the University of California, San Francisco. In this study, called the Turnaway study, we recruited several hundred women seeking abortion at 30 facilities all across the United States. Women were interviewed over the phone 1 week after they sought care, and then every 6 months for 5 years. This means we talked to women about their experiences up to 11 different times. This study has several important methodological features that overcome the problems other studies suffered. For one, it is the first to include women from states all across the country and to achieve a high level of follow-up over time. Also, it is the first to interview women having abortions later in pregnancy, including up to 24 weeks gestation, as well as women having first trimester abortions, which is when over 90% of U.S. abortions occur. Let's start with what we know about women's short-term emotions after an abortion. Taken together, prior studies and the new UCSF study tell a consistent story about women's emotions shortly after an abortion. The most common emotion women reported is relief. Beyond that, women's emotional reactions to the abortion are quite variable. Not all women react the same way. For example, among the over 600 women in the UCSF study, by far the most common emotion about the abortion 1 week afterwards was relief, which was reported by 90% of women. Yet women also experienced ranges and mixes of emotions. More than half reported feeling at least a little bit of sadness or guilt, and more than half reported at least a little bit of happiness or relief. In fact, women frequently reported feeling a mix of emotions at once. For instance, among those who reported sadness, half also reported happiness. Among those reporting any regret, 87% also reported relief. Interestingly, women typically felt more negative emotions about the unwanted pregnancy than they did about the actual abortion. But what if how women feel days after an abortion is not how they feel years later? What does the UCSF study tell us about how women's emotions change over time? Following hundreds of women over 5 years, we found a clear and significant trend of decreasing intensity of all emotions, both what we might consider positive emotions and negative emotions, about the abortion over time. This decline occurred primarily in the first year after the abortion and leveled out afterward. So the levels of sadness and guilt some women expressed 1 week declined, as did the intensity of happiness and relief. Remembering our finding about how prevalent the emotion of relief was 1 week after the abortion, we found that women expressed more relief than any of the negative emotions about the abortion at all times, including 5 years after the abortion. It's also worth noting that women reported thinking about the abortion less often as time went on. By 5 years post-abortion, they said they thought about it rarely or never. Another thing I want to emphasize is that we did not see an emergence of negative emotions over time. In other words, the women who expressed negative emotions months or years after the abortion were the same women who had experienced negative emotions 1 week after having the abortion. Throughout the study, we asked participants to reflect on whether or not having the abortion was the right decision for them, given their situation at the time. What we learned was illuminating. Over 95% of the more than 600 women reported feeling that the abortion was the right decision for them at each interview over the course of the study. Women said abortion was the right decision, whether they reported mostly positive emotions, mostly negative emotions, or both, and it was true regardless of whether they had the abortion in the first trimester or later in pregnancy. Even among women who reported negative emotions, still 90% felt the abortion was the right decision. This finding makes a really important point. Experiencing negative emotions, even the emotion of regret, after an abortion is not the same as believing that choosing abortion was the wrong decision. Instead, it appears that most women feel confident that they made the best decision, even if they have some negative feelings about it. Now, although data show that almost all women reported feeling relief and that the abortion was the right decision for them, a small group of women did question their decision afterwards and continued to feel negative emotions about the abortion over time. Participants who had more negative emotions were those who also reported a greater desire to be pregnant in the first place, and those who had more difficulty deciding to seek the abortion. Women who perceived high levels of abortion stigma in their communities were also more likely to report feeling negative emotions over the 5 years after. What do these findings mean for abortion policy in the U.S., where debates about abortion often focus on the potential mental harm to women? In my view, the research shows that experiencing complex emotions and having strong feelings after an abortion, even negative ones, does not constitute a public health problem, nor does it indicate that a woman feels she made the wrong decision. Research shows clearly that post-abortion emotions vary from woman to woman, largely as a function of life circumstances, difficulty with decision-making about the pregnancy, and experiences of stigma and social support. Mechanisms targeting all women, such as legal regulations or even counseling requirements, do not address these individualized issues and may, in fact, exacerbate negative emotions. The best data show that women en masse do not regret their abortions. Abortion does not cause emotional harm. Law, policy, and clinical practice should reflect this evidence. For more information, please visit these websites.